Let's talk about what brought you to the fertility space in general and compelled you to take your storytelling talents to this environment. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I married my high school sweetheart, Vince, which sounds so nerdy, but we always say that we went to 2 different colleges, so we boned other people. Sorry, can I talk like that?
Oh, of course you can. And I think it's important. Yeah.
Okay. So we started dating when we were 16 and we were in love. We really were, but we did go to different colleges and we knew that it was silly to be 18 and strapped down to some long distance boyfriend, girlfriend. So we decided to break up, but still visit each other sometimes during college. All of this to say that most of our beginning of our career was trying not to get pregnant. Once we started having sex, because I talk about this on my show a lot, all I knew growing up about sex education was like, if you don't use a condom and you have sex, you're going to get pregnant. That was drilled into my head. I had no idea. We never learned the nuances or the granular stuff about reproduction and fertility. And it was like, here's how to put a condom on a banana. And if you don't use a condom, you're going to get pregnant. That was literally all they told us. So we didn't start to try to have kids until long after Vince and I had gotten married. So I was in my 30s before we even started trying to have kids. We'd been together for almost like 20 years, which is wild. And I did get pregnant with my daughter, naturally, no assisted reproductive technology, when I was 34. And then we had just moved to New York a couple of years prior. We didn't really have that many people that we were friends with that had kids, because in a city like New York, people just put it off. It's very career driven.
Yeah.
We just weren't running with the crowd that had kids. So when I had my daughter, it was like I was one of the first people in our friend group to have kids. Although all my friends back in Chicago, where we were originally from, that I had gone to college with, that were my same exact age, we're starting to have babies. So it's interesting, like depending on your location, it affects your fertility, or at least it did for me. Yeah. And I've always said, if we hadn't moved from Chicago when I was about to turn 30, we probably would have had kids sooner. And I probably wouldn't have had infertility issues because mine were directly a result of my age. So it's interesting that like fork in the road really took me down a totally different path into a totally different career. You know, like none of this stuff would have happened had we never moved out east, which is kind of interesting. But back to the story, and I'll keep it brief. We didn't start for our second kid until I was like 38, because I just didn't know, again, much about my fertility or infertility or what happened as you got older. I really didn't know about like egg quality, diminishing as you got older. None of this stuff. And I feel like a total idiot admitting that, because it seems so silly, but I just didn't know. I was looking to Hollywood because I was working in that field, interviewing celebrities and stuff for magazines. And it was like, oh, Halle Berry just had a baby at 46, or so-and-so is,
Yes. Yeah.
having babies later and later. And there wasn't a lot of talk about what was actually happening behind the scenes, whether they were doing IVF or using a surrogate or whatever it may be. I just kind of thought you can have babies whenever you want, and we're not ready yet for number 2. So it was a rude awakening when we did start to try for the second baby, and I had 4 miscarriages in a row.
Oof.
Like, what is happening? And we finally, I'm not laughing at, it was devastating, but I'm enough removed to it now that it's not, I don't sob every time I think about it or talk about it. It was really hard. It was really, really hard. Yeah. And, I had a lot of friends who had one miscarriage, but not a lot of friends that had multiple. So I was thrown into this weird chunk of demographic where I didn't know what was going on. And I didn't have anybody that I could really talk to about it.
Hi, I hope you loved this little excerpt of Stork'd, the podcast where we talk about all things family building and families. This was a little taste of the bigger episode. We call it a Stork'd Munchkin. If you love what you heard, I highly encourage you to check out the full episode wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also find it on the Stork'd website at storkdpodcast.com. If you're in the process of building your own family or exploring what family means to you and you want to stay up to date on all relevant topics related to family building, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. It's called Let's Start a Family, and it is found on Substack. Happy listening.